The very first of the PSRs was PSR 0. They all have these really catchy numeric names, can be a bit confusing, but PSR 0 was the original autoloading standard, and it took advantage of PHP's namespaces to make a common way of naming directories after namespaces and files after classes and ending in a .php suffix. Recently we've introduced PSR 4, which is an improved autoloading standard. So I want to talk more about PSR 4 than PSR 0 because that's the current recommendation. Having a standard way of doing autoloading, I think, makes it much easier to know how to organize your code without really having to think about it too much. There are some really good autoloader examples on the PHP Fig site, so you can literally take their autoloader, plug it into your application, and see if you are compatible, see if that works for your stuff. So the PSR 4 standard aims to lay out some rules, simple rules, that make it really easy to understand how to name and store stuff so that your application will play nicely with others. I've put the URL there of the full description, which is much more verbose than mine. But basically it boils down to this. All of your classes are case sensitive. So if you're using camel case with an initial capital letter for your class names, which we usually do, then your file names need to be named the same way. All classes need to go in namespaces. And that's a big change from PSR 0. We allowed global namespace classes because namespaces were really new. PHP 5.3 has been out for a long time, it's now end of life. So we're ready to take on the next level. All classes will go in namespaces, and I already discussed namespaces earlier on in this course. So feel free to check back and see the object-oriented elements if you want to see those. The namespaces, whether you have one namespace or you're using a nested namespace structure, will correlate exactly and case sensitively with your directory names and your directory nesting. Your classes will be stored at the correct directory namespace level in whatever their class name is, .php. So we don't do .inc, we don't do lowercase classes, we do case sensitive class name .php. Another big diversion from the original PSR 0 recommendation was that it allowed underscores to be exploded as directory separators. Now they're just part of the class name and they have no special meaning. So that's something that changed quite a bit in PSR 4. Again, this is due to, we're all familiar with namespaces now. All the frameworks use namespaces, and hopefully your application code does too. So we can just ignore the underscores. You don't see them very often in class names now, and they shouldn't be treated as directory separators when you're dealing with your autoloading. One of the major benefits of the PSR 0 and PSR 4 standards is this leads to very rigid naming and organization of code in all our projects and in all our libraries. And so we now have a PHP dependency management tool called Composer. Without the autoloading PSRs, we wouldn't have been able to build Composer. I think it would have been too difficult with the really sort of varied, non-standard way of organizing projects that we had before this. I'm going to cover Composer in real detail in a later section, but the PSR 4, for me at least, is the first step along facilitating a tool like that.